Hello everybody and welcome back to LRN, the home of F1 fan opinion, where we react to all the latest F1 news, rumours and headlines. And today, massive confirmation from Lewis Hamilton that he fully intends to sign a new multi-year, suggested 5 years, as Toto Wolff confirmed in the past, that he will sign a 5-year deal or close to that to keep him at Mercedes and in Formula One for the foreseeable future. Not entirely surprising news, as I say. We had covered this story before, obviously all of the mainstream media picking up now, but we did cover it when Channel 4 did their interview with with Toto Wolff, where he confirmed conversations he had had with Lewis that he did intend to stick around for a few years to come. And not just that, we've had comments from Lewis himself, of course, around why he signed this deal. The fact that he sees that he's had a championship taken away from him, certainly reading between the lines, that seems to be what he said. So we'll go through his quotes and pick them apart a bit and react to what he's actually said, and also go through what he said about George Russell, his impact on the team, and why he feels that maybe Russell has managed to beat him in terms of points this season, and what Hamilton's been doing that's maybe intentionally set him back. And you could put it down to drivers' excuses, or you could take it at face value and say, yeah, that all makes sense. Lewis, at least in the last few races, at least, has proven how good he is, obviously, in that fight with Russell. But of course, across the course of the season, it's very interesting to listen to him, what he has to say about why there's been that difference of performance between Russell and Hamilton, and how strategically and how the way they think has maybe impacted the total points haul that they've managed this season, and the fact that they're not in the championship. But we'll get to that. But as I say, if you are new around here, please make sure to subscribe. On the bottom right hand side, we react to all the latest F1 stories, so make sure you're subscribed, because of course we are waiting for the result of the cost cap saga. We know to expect something today. We think there's going to be a press conference, so there may even be another video up on the channel later today. So make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell icon to be notified when that goes up, because we're going to be reacting to whatever the findings are, whatever the punishment is in the cost cap saga. We will be reacting to it and responding to it on the channel, and I hope that's going to be later today. So make sure you're subscribed to be notified when that goes up. But for now then, we're talking Lewis Hamilton, and we'll get right into his comments, and then we'll talk about it and what we think that means for Hamilton moving forward. So we'll go through his comments here. So he has been quoted as saying, "I really don't know what the next 5 years hold. I think we're still trying to work on that. There are a lot of great things being put in place, like I just launched a production company this week, but I feel great in my mind and body. I want to continue. I think there's more stuff for us to achieve together, so I want to be here longer." So of course, that alluding to, we know he's got his film production company. Of course, we had Brad Pitt at the Austin GP, because he's helping starring in a film that Hamilton is producing with his new film production company, and we know that he's got interests outside of Formula One. So that's one of the reasons people have been speculating for a long time on Hamilton's future, is because we know how many interests he has outside of the sport, and therefore it kind of made sense that when he reached the level or the number of championships that he wanted, that he'd step aside and he'd go and focus on his music and his film and his fashion and other things that he's interested in. But of course, the news is he isn't going anywhere soon. So he carried on. "If we'd have a year like last year and we're competing at the front all year, who knows where I would be? Each year you have to ask yourself if you're willing to give as much, if not more, than you did when you first started. Are you willing to give up all your time to prepare and train and work with the team and deliver? If there's ever a moment that I'm arriving and I'm just coasting along, then that's when I don't belong here, and I don't deserve the position here, and that's when I should stop. I question myself as to whether I'm able to do that and whether I want to do that, and the answer is yes." So clear there. I think he's completely right. I think when you reach that stage of your career, we've seen it with other drivers, when you don't have that fire in your belly to go and compete and turn up, and if you find yourself when you're at races like Vettel has, and I think he's a great example, where he realized that his wanting to be with his family was overtaking his wanting to be in the sport, and it was impacting his drive and his fire to give up all his time and all his time with his family to be in Formula One. And once that balance had shifted, Vettel of course made the decision to move away at the end of this year, of course, retire and go and spend that time with his family. Now, of course, he could be a year out and he could miss it and he could be desperate to get back and he might regret that he retired when he did. But I think Vettel's made the right decision. And again, we've discussed it before. And Hamilton needs to reach that position himself. So what he's saying is he hasn't done that yet. Yes, he has these other interests in his life. Yes, you know, he wants to focus on his film and fashion, everything else. But for now, his main focus, that fire still exists. And now we're going to get into the reasons why I think that he still has that fire there. So next, he said, we obviously have a championship that we need to get back, and I love the mission and that challenge with my team. So key there, we have a championship we need to get back, and you can read that a couple of ways. You can just read it as, I used to be champion, I'm not anymore. Or you can read it as, I am the champion from last year, but I didn't win it. And I want that title back. I want my 8th championship that I feel I won. And to be honest, it could be both. It could just be, you know, he lost it to Rosberg, and then he went and he won it the following year. Obviously, Rosberg, again, was a bit different. I think the Rosberg Championship, for those of you that saw it and enjoyed it in its entirety at the time, Rosberg was one of the most undeserving champions I've ever seen in Formula One. The amount of luck and DNFs and incidents it took for him to outscore Hamilton on points was crazy. So, again, I think you can see why Hamilton would have been like, not even worrying about it, and that is why, in my opinion, Rosberg retired. He knew he couldn't beat Hamilton over the course of a fair season, and he took that decision of, I want to retire as world champion. That was Rosberg's decision. That's in the past, but that is what it is. But I think with Hamilton, he knows, or at least in himself, he believes he is the best. He believes that he can come back. He can beat Verstappen. You give him, you know, without other people interjecting, without the FIA getting involved, without incidents occurring, give him a car capable of competing, and he believes he can win. Now, there are people out there who will say Verstappen has surpassed him. Verstappen is just a better driver than Hamilton. And you could be right. That's not a problem. But we're talking about how Hamilton feels about himself. He still believes he's the best. He still believes he's got something to give and that he can, with the right car, deliver a world championship. So it's within his right, if the team still want him, to sign another long-term deal, and us as fans to decide individually whether or not we want to see him stick around. I certainly do. I think he's great for the sport, and I'm glad to see him stay. But I know certain people maybe think that he's past it, and that's fair enough. But for me, the longer he's, well, I say not the longer he stays in the sport, the better. Because again, if he loses that fire, if he does drop off a cliff, if he clearly doesn't have it anymore, then I would be the first to say, you know what, it's time. But I don't think we're there yet. I still think you've seen it in recent performances. He's still on it. He's still capable, and I want to see him in a car competing at the front with Verstappen. Because if nothing else, it's great for the sport, that challenge, assuming that we don't get the same issues and the same interjections by the FIA and F1 that caused, of course, all the controversy in 2021. Assuming it's just a straight, fair fight between those two. Who doesn't want to see that? Because it was so good when we didn't have those issues surrounding it. It was legitimate, just on-track racing. It was awesome, and I'm all for that happening again. So let's hope Mercedes can get on top of their car and we can see a fight to the end of the season. And let's hope other people can get involved as well, of course. I'm not against, of course, I want to see Leclerc in there, Sainz in there, I want to see McLaren in there. You know, get them all in, but I want to see the big names of still Verstappen, Hamilton, along with others, fighting at the front for the title to the end of the season. That for me is the key point. Whoever it is that ends up competing with Verstappen, assuming it is Verstappen still at the front next year and in the years after, let's have it to the end of the season. Let's have the grid closer together and just keep it exciting. Because right now, the biggest excitement is McLaren versus Alpine, and a back markers fighting each other with Haas, Aston Martin, and teams like that, and who's going to finish ahead in those battles. So that to me isn't right. We want to see, of course, Drive to Survive again went a long way to create those competition and show people and get people excited about the battles further down the grid. I always was, but I think for a lot of fans, it opened their eyes to there is more than the championship battle in F1, and I think that's brilliant because there is so much excitement that goes on all the way down the grid. You don't just have to focus on the guys at the front, but for the sake of the sport and for the sake of the fact that we know even when there is no fighting at the front, the cameras love to just watch the guy in the lead go round and round. It's better for the fans if the guys at the front are competing closer together for the rest of the season until the end, so that we do get excitement throughout the year. That for me. But anyway, back to Hamilton's comments. So he then went on to say, every single person that's back here has given us so much time in their lives on the road, year after year, and this one's been a really, really challenging one for us all in so many ways. Hamilton said, it's been beautiful to see the journey that everyone individually has gone on, but also collectively, how we've gelled together and pulled up closer to each other, been more open. I can't wait to the time where we get back to success, when we finally get that win, when we get that championship. It's going to make all of these tough moments worthwhile. And the thing is, for me, I think that really fits with what we were talking about when we saw Toto Wolff talk about the fact that Hamilton would stay around for a few more years. I immediately felt that he probably would only stay as long until he got that next championship, that fire that he needs to keep going would go out when he gets that 8th title, the title he feels was taken away from him, that he lost unjustly. We know what happened in Abu Dhabi last year. And I think what's feeding his fire at the moment is the fact that he does feel wrong done by. He does feel like his 8th world championship was taken from him and he wants it back and he's willing to fight for it, and it's giving him that energy to go. And I think when he gets it, when he gets the 8th world championship, when he becomes the all-time record holder in terms of outright ahead of Michael Schumacher in terms of world titles, I think that's when he will call it a day. Now, that may never happen. We've seen it with plenty of drivers where, you know, they're the best, but then suddenly they never get the car again. Vettel being a good example, where, of course, he's got his 4 in a row and then he never won one again. It happens, and it could happen to Lewis and Mercedes. It's difficult with Mercedes. We're so used to them in recent history being so dominant that it's hard to see them failing like that, but it felt like that with Red Bull. It felt like Red Bull were going to win forever when Vettel was there. So it definitely can happen, and it's not outside the realm of possibility that he signs a 5-year deal and in those 5 years he doesn't win anything. But for now, I do believe that if that title win comes in the 2nd year, the 3rd year, that is when he's going to call it a day. I don't see him seeing out that 5 years if he can tell they're just not going to be able to compete, and if they start falling away, and maybe even Audi come into it and they start absolutely smashing it at the front of the grid, and it's even harder for Mercedes with another big boy there to get themselves definitely winning consistently. I think he'll call it a day. So I think those 5 years are to give him enough time to make sure that he gets his 8th world championship. But he said he will call it a day when that fire goes out. And I just do think that is intrinsically linked to that 8th world championship. Let me know if you agree in the comments below. I want to know, do you genuinely believe that he'd stick around for the whole time? Even let's say he won the championship next year, he gets his 8th world title. Is he sticking around for another 4 years to see how many he can get? Or is he going when that happens, whenever in that period it may be? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I do think maybe if he did it in the 1st year, then maybe, yeah, he sticks around for maybe 1 or 2. But if he does get it in those first couple of years, I just can't see him seeing out all 5. I can't see him pushing the boat out. I do think that he would maybe go in and see if he can retain it again, and then if he doesn't, he's gone. Or maybe he gets it again, and that again gives him that, maybe I can do one more. But for me, on a general point of view, if he wins that 8th world title, I think that's it. I think he loses that fire. I think it goes out, and I think we'll see the end of Lewis Hamilton in Formula 1. You may like that, you may not. It's just an honest opinion on what I think will happen, and I could be completely wrong, but that's kind of how I'm reading the room at the moment, and I definitely want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. But we'll get in now then to what he said about George Russell and about their competition with each other this year, and why he feels that Russell's basically been able to stay ahead of him in terms of World Championship points. So first of all, he said George is doing a great job. I don't have any problems with it. There's no issue in the background with us. So confirming, of course, the relationship between the two has been absolutely fine. George, I would say, and his team, they don't experiment the same, obviously. But that's because I've been here a long time, so I'm willing to take these risks. George, it's his first year with the team, so he comes in, he's just doing his job to the best of his ability. Very little movement of setup. I'm doing all the legwork, back and forth, here and there, different wings, all these different things, and I like that anyway. If we come into next year and we have a car that we are much happier with, then we can be more focused on not having to go crazy with setups, then we can have a better battle. If he finishes ahead at the end of the season, I don't really feel anything about it. We're not in the championship. We are 4th and 6th. Now, if it was 1st and 2nd, it's different. Really interesting there from Hamilton. Now, as I say, there's 2 points of view here. One is drivers' excuses about why I'm being beaten by my teammate, and where you fall on the whether you love or hate Hamilton is probably going to dictate where you fall on terms of that opinion. For me, it might be a bit of both, but I think there's a lot of truth in what he's saying. I think if ignore Hamilton for a minute, look at this from Russell's point of view. You're going into a new employer, the biggest team arguably on the grid. I know, of course, Ferrari are the biggest team in F1, but I'm talking about in terms of recent success, and it's definitely one of the biggest drives and one of the biggest teams, right? So he's gone in there, coming from Williams. All he wants to do is make a good impression. All he wants to do is not rock the boat, not get anything wrong, be consistent, and he's achieved that. He was absolutely Mr. Consistency, but he doesn't have the money in the bank that Hamilton has, right? So he just wants to not put a foot wrong, and he's done that brilliantly. Not questioning that at all. I think anyone in his situation would be feeling that way and doing the same thing. And it's not a bad thing in any way whatsoever. But he's clearly there. He just wants to get it set up right and just make sure he can put in consistent performances, which is brilliant. Good for George. But I think Hamilton, though, he has that money in the bank. He has that ability to go, you know what, I want to try this. I want to try that. He knows he can have an accident, and he's got years of experience with the Mercedes team, years of winning them trophies where he can go, well, yeah, it didn't work, but we both know when we get this right, I'm good enough, right? There's no, they can't come back on him. And the viewpoint, if Hamilton gets something wrong, will not be treated in the same way as if Russell gets it wrong. So it's good for Russell to be safe, make safe decisions, whereas Hamilton can go with crazy setups, do different things, risk falling down the grid, risk getting it wrong and not being able to overtake, and get his qualifying wrong and struggling on a race weekend, because he knows that long term, what they learn from doing that experimentation, when they find themselves in a position, if the upgrades all come together, and they find themselves in a position fighting for race wins, he's going to be a lot better for it and know more about the car than Russell's side of the garage because of all the experimentation that he's done. So it is very much a short-term pain for a long-term gain. That's the way I see it. So again, I don't think that, you could see it as a Hamilton excuse, but I see it as honesty. I think Russell has actually benefited from the fact that he hasn't done that in terms of this season. We know how basically crap this car's been this year for Mercedes. Obviously, it's hard to say that when so many other teams' cars been worse, but they've had so many issues. And I think obviously Hamilton, he's a winner. He's been winning for years. He's desperate to get back to the front, and he's trying everything he can do to get it sorted. Whilst I think Russell's coming in, he's seen Mercedes winning. Mercedes are a race winning outfit, so let them do their job. Let them tell Russell a bit, what they need to do next, and trust in them. Whereas Hamilton's very much trusting in himself and his own instincts, and how he can help the team get to the front. And as I say, that it's not negative on either driver. I think they're coming at the season from very different points of view, and you can see from the points that it's absolutely worked out for Russell. And if the car ends up being completely redesigned, as the expectation as well, the DNA of the Mercedes next year is going to be completely different to what we saw this year, then really a lot of the experimentation that Hamilton's done may not end up benefiting them hugely. But we know the regulations aren't changing massively, so there will still be benefits there. But it's just interesting to see how they've approached the season in completely different ways. Obviously, Russell's still leading the way, but recent results have been very much in Hamilton's favour, and you could put that largely down to all of the work and experimentation and different setups and the way that Hamilton approached the season earlier in the year when it was hitting him really badly and he was struggling to get used to the car. I think maybe that has now finally swung everything back into Hamilton's favour. That's how I took it anyway. Again, let me know how you think about that in the comments below. Do you think that Hamilton is making excuses about why he's not ahead of Russell in terms of the championship, or do you think he's making legitimate comments and he is putting the groundwork in so that when the car or a car of theirs is ready to compete, they're at the front winning for the race wins and titles, they are in the best possible position to fight for those race wins, because they've done all of the learning through the time where they weren't and the car wasn't capable of being at the front. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That's my reaction to Hamilton officially announcing his intent to stay in Formula 1 for a few more years, and his comments on George Russell and the relationship they've had this year, and why there's been a disparity in their performance. I say, let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, I just want to thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, and again, make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell icon, because we will be going up with another video as soon as we get whatever the fallout is from the cost cap saga. So please make sure you're subscribed to be notified when that goes live. Otherwise, again, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.